Do that again.
Okay, hang on.
Elmo is a very big fan of MB Roland Bourbon.
So that's Elmo. That is
Just don't
legit
tickle.
Elmo. I
Don't
need you to
tickle
do truck stop Elmo.
Elmo wants to know if you want to go at Elmo's stall.
Yeah, shake your
Truck
foot
stop
under the
Elmo.
wall.
Where would you like for me to tickle you, Elmo?
That tickle.
Oh, so bad. So
All right, let's start this. Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards, and Zeke Baker is off sleeping somewhere. And together, we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. And this is one of my favorite episodes every year. I think we're going to get to do a couple. This is when our friends from the Firewater review, and that is when we have Seth Brown and Aaron Cave, and also Aaron's brother Jeremy, who loves to tag along and provide Cuban cigars for us all, so thank you for that. That is what, there's one time a year we all get together. Everybody is always excited, and we are on site somewhere, but say hello to the folks, Seth and Aaron, because it's great to have you.
Hello, Seth and Aaron.
Hey, it's been a long time.
It has. It's been almost 1
It's
year.
literally been a year.
It has been. Yeah.
Do you guys remember how to do a podcast?
It's like training wheels.
Yeah.
It's like training wheels.
Yeah. Once they come off, once you start riding, you never forget.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
You guys were hiding in the attic at Zeke's Airbnb.
I think Zeke is currently in the attic at Zeke's Airbnb.
Probably he's sleeping. He's sleeping in the attic.
It's all right.
It's, what is it? It's like Toys in the Attic, the Aerosmith album.
What kind of toys are we talking about?
Yeah. It's more like bourbon in the attic for us.
If it's Zeke, you never know what toys are in the attic.
So the Firewater review toys are, it's whiskey in the attic.
Yes.
It's whiskey in the attic. That's what it is. So
I thought it was whiskey in the jar.
No, it's whiskey in the attic for us because we like to hide out. We take a year hiatus and then we show back up randomly at MB Roland, and that's what we do.
Well, I always think it's funny because I know you guys, you use me, and that's okay. You use me just to get your podcast fixed.
Because you have great recording equipment.
Yes.
We're low budget, you're high budget.
No, you have figured out how to do the Skype thing well. Not everybody figures out how to do a Skype podcast well, but you guys have actually figured out levels and stuff like that. And I think that's only something that people as professional as you two have been able to do. I appreciate that. I appreciate when you guys podcast. I am dying to know when you guys are going to podcast again. Will this happen?
We are dying to know too.
Yes.
You always dangle the carrot. You always dangle the carrot.
Yeah.
People want to know.
You do know that I'm in marketing, right?
I do know this. I do know this.
There was a little conversation last night.
There was.
Yeah, it couldn't. It's hard.
It
You're a
is.
dad drinking bourbon. We're both dads drinking bourbon as well, and it's hard.
I feel
But-
like both of you are like exes and you love the idea of being with each other, but then when you go to practice it doesn't always work out.
No,
it's like
when we're together, it actually works out really well.
Really, it's a great chemistry between us. It's a love story.
We met online, we swiped right,
And here
all
we are. Yeah.
so maybe if you guys next time, I think what you should do is plan like 3 or 4 days in Nashville. And if you can record 52 episodes,
That's all.
if you can record 52 episodes in those 3 days, even if you record,
we got a year's worth of shows.
yeah, or even if you record 12, you could do once a month. But
Yeah.
like once a year, you guys get together for 3 days and you just record podcasts in Zeke's Airbnb, and then you're all set.
So the funny story about that is that we were sitting on the back porch last night at Zeke's Airbnb as he was hiding in the attic.
I love how we're talking about Zeke and he's not here.
He's not here. That's what happens when you're not here. So we were sitting out on the deck last night having some pours, and Aaron looked at me and said, it was like, what do you think about firing the show back up or something along those lines? But you brought up the option of doing it once a month.
Once a month, yeah.
So I think once a month is probably feasible. I mean, my kids are a little bit older, and they're getting into baseball and softball and just being older kids and a little bit more hectic life, and that definitely seems more reasonable. It's not that we don't like drinking whiskey, that we're not putting out shows. So it's on the table. It's on the table.
I understand for us, it's like you can get us, but you have to get us after 9:30.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be surprised how many distilleries come to Nashville and say, yeah, we will hang out with you after 9:30.
That's the thing with me right now, in my point in my family's life, is that it may be after 10:30 or 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And most normal people on a work night are going to sleep at that point.
That's why you have to be like me. I mean, I maybe sleep 4 to 5 hours a night.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. Well, you're 21 years old,
I wish.
and I'm 58 years old. I'm making shit up now.
No, I mean, you look younger than I do. You're not bald and fat.
There's gray hair. You have no gray.
I
in
have
your
some
beard.
gray. Look right there. I got some gray hair in the beard.
I have gray here.
You have gray right in the middle. I'm graying from the sides in, just like I was balding from the back to the front.
It's all moving to your chin.
It is
That's all.
eventually
It's just migrating.
Once
It's like the glaciers.
once everything converges at the chin, we know
The hair glaciers are melting to your chin.
I
That's
would
what's happening.
have reached peak Benjamin Button status when everything reaches my chin. But that being said, I really do appreciate what you guys do. I think there is a big there's a big void without the Firewater review in the podcast world. I think a lot of people would agree with me. It's just the attention to detail that you guys do to every single one of your pours that you review, and just your love for whiskey. I will stop being sentimental. We appreciate you. And that's all I'll say, and we hope that you guys figure something out. Even if it's quarterly. You know what? Start quarterly. Maybe, once a quarter, you guys get together.
Be the best quarterly podcast
We can be.
Well, if you think about it, you guys could do like 3 to 4 whiskeys and do once a quarter, right? So you do one show that's really long, maybe it's an hour and a half.
Maybe it's every barrel pick that we should do. That's when we record a show.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
But we are here at MB Roland, and we are picking a barrel. It's an annual tradition now for the Firewater Review. You guys have extended the doors to Dad's Drinking Bourbon to come tag along with you. And then, we have Paul and Mary Beth and Mike from MB Roland that are here. Jeremy, we mentioned him. He's just there smoking his cigar.
He's the Z.
I'm along for the ride.
He's looking all cool. But Paul, Mary Beth, Mike, thank you so much for extending your doors open to us and letting us come pick a barrel. This is the second barrel pick I've had at MB Roland, and it's just been a great experience. You guys are actually doing right now, pulling back the curtain a little bit, you're doing your Bourbon and Beyond Takeover. So you have the password for Bourbon and Beyond. And if you drop your phone, and all of a sudden people start saying, Dad's Drinking Bourbon over and over. But this is your takeover for Bourbon and Beyond. But I said it on there. It's a very family atmosphere when you guys do a pick here. You have this big, long barn. This used to be a horse barn, right?
This
dairy
was actually
barn.
a dairy barn.
Dairy barn? Oh, those are cow things.
Yep.
They look like they were
These
horses.
trenches right here that are concreted in, that used to be where the cow actually, that was their rear end faced that direction. Boom, there you go.
That's where the udders were.
Yes.
It's an udder trench.
So how long have you got?
Clean it up.
So
the other trench.
Mike said it.
So let's talk about you guys here for a minute. I mean, love doing a pick here, but you guys have been along, this is about your 10th year, right? Tell us a little bit about your story. And Paul, I want to say you are a very smart man, naming a distillery after your wife. And I applaud you as a dad, and I understand where you came from.
No, that was totally an accident.
I'm sure it was a quote-unquote accident.
No, no. I'll tell you the story.
Hey, honey, guess what? I named a distillery after you. Like,
we had sat there and we had tossed up so many different names and ideas, and there actually was a previous distillery on this road, Barker's Mill. So we thought about, kind of giving a nod to history, but we didn't want it to appear like we were hijacking history, so we decided that we were not going to do that. We're not affiliated with that distillery. And he looks at me and he says, honey, he says, I think I want to name the distillery after you. And I'm a woman. I was so impressed. It touched me. In my heart, it touched me.
now you know why I played the guitar.
Yeah.
I figured out how to play John Mayer and Dave Matthews real quick.
Right?
Do not ever come to my house.
The
My wife
difference,
is a huge Dave
the
Matthews
difference
fan.
is Paul then turns around and looks at me, and our legal last name is Tomaszewski. My maiden name is Roland. He says, yeah, nobody can say Tomaszewski. So for a moment, he was really, really good. And then he lost it. He just went off the cliff. It's like, stop at the edge. Don't say anything else. You already won me over. But then when it's like, yeah, nobody can say Tomaszewski, you're done.
It still can't say it.
So what do you guys think, though, about maybe putting out like a vodka line? Tomaszewski would be a
right?
great vodka line.
We don't have column stills.
I know, but maybe Tomaszewski gin. That would be a good one.
Yeah, the problem is I don't like gin either.
There are some good
There's
barrel-aged
a few
gin.
out there with a gin and tonic, a good tonic, that I like, but it's not my thing.
There are some barrel-aged gins right now. Treaty Oak just put out a barrel-aged gin. It's like 147 proof.
So why would you want Christmas tree in your bourbon? I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just sitting there going, it's like, why mess with it? It's good the way it is.
For the same reason I like Midwinter's Night's Dram 1 week out of the year.
Yeah.
When it's Christmas, and it's nothing against High West. I think it's a great pour. I'm normally not a wine finish guy, but that thing is Christmas in a cup. And there's just something about like when the Christmas tree is up and you have the stockings hung, that's when I go for that Midwinter's Night's Dram. But, right now in July and
No.
in Tennessee,
You wanna
there's
chill
no
on
way I'm
some
going
evergreen.
for that.
Yeah.
So he named it after you.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. You were telling. So Tomaszewski was too hard to say, so he named after you.
Yeah, literally just my initials, MB. It stands for Mary Beth. Roland is my maiden name. So that was it. I mean, that's literally it.
I said it sounded like a whiskey.
Yeah, that's true.
And so he's got you for. I mean, not only are you guys married, but like he can always be like, I named the distillery after you, honey.
Yeah, but what that means to me is some women drive their husbands to drink. I drove mine to making it. That's the difference.
I do love that. So what made you two actually decide to open a distillery in the first place? Did you have the farm before and you decided to open up a distillery, or did you do it all at the same time? What actually got you going there?
We had a family farm that was about 1,000 acres.
He's
and
making up crap. Don't stop. Stop. Tell the truth. Quit.
So,
If it was 1,000 acres, like
that'd be awesome.
I'm just looking for 10.
Yeah.
If you could
Yeah.
just give me a quarter of 10.
Yeah. No, absolutely nothing other than I said, hey, this would be cool. And she said, okay, I'm willing to go along with that. Stupidly, but she said that.
So
I want you to back up just a little bit because I know a little bit more to the story. So you were 101st.
Mm-hmm.
You were a Screaming Eagle. You were out of the military.
I was
correct?
getting out. Yeah.
Getting out, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I like the area.
Right.
And
So were you in Clarksville already?
Yeah, we lived within 5 miles of here.
So Fort Campbell, got out of the military, decided you wanted to kind of hang out in this area. Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Louisiana originally, outside of New Orleans.
Go Saints.
Yeah. Who dat? we were robbed.
Game was that call was awful.
Don't worry, we're going to make it up this year. But that being said, completely different, in a lot of ways, culture from where I grew up from here. And this area has continued to develop and grow over the years. But I mean, I jokingly say this, but where I'm from, when people say they don't drink, that just means they don't drink except in, social situations. And I mean, when people around here say they don't drink, that means they have never in their lives.
Or they just simply don't.
Yeah.
They don't even keep alcohol in a house. I mean, they're very serious about that around
Or they
here.
hide and keep it in the garage.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Or there are dry counties, or all sorts of things. I mean, I
Yeah,
know.
but usually for the folks that live in dry counties, if they choose to drink, they'll go to a neighboring county and go get their stuff. I mean, that's
That's what we did for a long time in Hopkins
Absolutely.
County because it was my senior year in high school. So 1995, Hopkins County became wet. So prior to that, we would cross the line into Christian County and pick up whatever we needed through a drive-through. So
Which is really funny that Christian County was the wet county.
Well, then you got Bourbon County.
Yeah.
And
Which
Christian
just
County.
went wet a few years ago.
Exactly.
But Bourbon County is actually named after the French family.
Yes.
So not actually after the drink. They
Right.
were.
Correct.
well, and Christian County is also not named because of Christians in
Right.
the area.
it was just
Exactly, the
coincidence.
Revolutionary War colonel. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a man named Christian.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was still made for a fun
the
story.
irony of it, absolutely. Yeah.
So was the farm the dream first, or was the distillery
No,
the
it
dream
just
first?
the actual location here popped up, and it was one of those things where it was an Amish farm, and it came up for sale, and we kind of knew at the time that was a rarity. And looking at everything, we said, "There's too much here telling us that this is right, that this is the place to do this." And so we went ahead and got the actual land, and the plan was, okay, what are we going to do? Well, this is a big chunk of debt to take, so let's go ahead and get things going and start the distillery and make some money off of this. I mean, we actually have to cash flow.
Make money. Right.
This is not what y'all get paid to do. This is not what you get paid to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've heard this joke a million times, and anybody listening to the podcast, I apologize, but you truly have liquid assets.
Right.
Once you have a distillery, it's like you're 100% liquid, where it's all sitting in the barn upstairs.
I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
thankful
like-
they are 100% liquid.
It's like betting on futures.
it's just now that the actual lending market is looking to actually value what you have as far as assets in storage. I mean, this is a new phenomenon for small distilleries now over the past year or two. And so we can, actually say, okay, we've got this much, and this is how much we currently sell, and there's a certain amount of value based on that inventory. So it's a new concept.
Now, tell us a little bit about the distillery here, because you have a regular bourbon, you have a wheated bourbon, you have a rye, you have a couple other products I want to talk about here in a little bit, but tell everybody a little bit about your story and what you guys actually produce here. You got a great staff. You got Mike, you got Liz, you got Taylor, and both of you. So tell me a little bit about what y'all are doing and what you have for. Hey, everybody knows Grandma's Candy Bowl, and that's one that we'll talk about.
If they don't, they should know.
And if they don't, it's probably too late, right?
Exactly, because it's gone. She gone.
Tell us a little bit about what you guys are actually producing.
So our focus is bourbon, and we have one main recipe that we do that's 78% white corn, local white corn, grown here in Christian County, and 17% rye, 5% malt. And the idea is we want some spice in there, but we don't want it over the top. And so we also make a wheated bourbon, a dark fired bourbon, and we also make a rye whiskey, and of course our dark fired whiskey, and several other whiskeys. But at the end of the day, the bulk of what we're making as far as barrels and filling, new actual cooperage is our standard bourbon mash. And then second to that would be the wheated bourbon and then the rye whiskey. Well, the dark fired bourbon as well.
Yeah.
But the dark fired bourbon is largely hedged on how much volume of dark fired corn we have, which is limited right now. And it, we'll continue to make more of that, but it's one of those things that it's very labor intensive to actually smoke the corn the way that we do. And when we get that, we'll basically immediately make product with it. The dark fired whiskey, which is the same recipe but aged in a used barrel, particularly a used bourbon barrel, that one is almost like a Kentucky Scotch. We don't like using that word, but at the same time, that's the best description, minus, of course, the peat and the iodine and a lot of the stuff that hopefully people don't like associated with scotches as far as flavors go.
I feel like there's a lot of American malts or higher malted American whiskeys where an Irish whiskey is just really an easy drinker, and a Scotch is going to have more of that malt. Depending on the area of Scotland that you're actually getting it from, it might be more peated. An Islay is going to be more peated than a Highland and all that. But I feel like American malts are a very approachable Scotch light, where if you like a little bit more malt, that can make it a nice drinker. It just doesn't have the smokiness or the Band-Aid flavor that...
The iodine.
Yeah. And I know you said we're not allowed to say that, Band-Aid, but I'm not saying it about your stuff. I'm saying it about Scotch. And that is very much a Band-Aid type. Sometimes it's more the Islay than anything else, but I really like seeing what those American whiskeys are actually doing with a more malted Scotch-like profile. It's just me.
Well, of course, we're not using malt as the main grain. It's the Kentucky kind of bourbon accent with doing it corn-based. The whole thing with malt is, of course, the level of smoke and peat and all that fun stuff. And some places peat their own malt, some places don't. It depends on the Scotch distillery. But in our case, we're smoking all the corn here, and we've played with smoking other grains, but at the end of the day, smoking the corn, we can integrate that flavor with smoked corn without having to smoke other grains. And it's a unique flavor, it really is. That campfire kind of barbecue flavor and aroma you get with it. I mean, it's not for everyone, but a lot of people are just like, man, that's very unique, very different.
Definitely make some really cool cocktails,
Yeah,
too.
certainly. But a lot of the distilleries in America that are doing smoked things, they're either not they might be using their own grain that they buy peated, or they might buy, a certain amount of malt that's from Scotland, whatever. But in our case, we're smoking all the corn and making a very unique flavor with the hardwood smoked, process that we do here, just like the tobacco farmers in Western Kentucky.
Talk a little bit about the grains, because that's something that we've spoken about a little bit.
And the white corn is unique
The white corn, and it's all local.
Yeah, it's all local. It was just unique that when we set up here and we went to the local granary and we started talking to them about different grains to use as our main grain for, whatever bourbon recipe we were going to use. And they came up with they said, well, we have this white corn. And so talk to them about it as far as the quality. And the biggest thing is it's food grade. It's actually made for sending to places that make grits and tortilla chips. And in our case, we're sitting there going, well, if it's good enough for food, it sure as heck should be good enough for whiskey, for bourbon. And so we came up with that, and we did not realize at the time that having access to a large volume of white corn like we have, a good quality white corn, is a unique situation for any distillery, particularly for any in Kentucky that are, they might be getting number 2 yellow dent corn, all that kind of stuff. And in our case, we're just like, Hey, you're right there. Why don't you bring us the white corn that y'all have there in a huge volume?
And talk a little bit about that though, because if you turn back the clock to the 80s, late 70s, and even prior to that, I mean, a lot of those corns were still, they weren't necessarily food grade, because I think that's where you guys kind of set apart from the rest, right?
Yeah, we actually get ours as cleaned and ready to go for food production versus a typical big distillery. They're going to get their grain and they're going to have to go through some kind of sifting process to actually provide a corn that it doesn't have all the chaff and the gravel and things like that in there that come essentially from the stuff off the combine out in the field.
Well, one thing too I want to point out is that a lot of folks, they have our bourbon and they say, there's a lot of sweetness in it. There's a lot of, sometimes it's corn forward. We do get some folks that think that we still age in very small barrels, because when we started, we actually did have, smaller barrels. Now we've graduated up to mainly 53s. That's pretty much almost all we're filling, except for a few 25s.
Right.
And the misconception is that deep flavor and the real rich sweetness is coming from those smaller barrels, because a lot of craft distilleries get known for that. And it's not. It's not at all. It's coming from that corn, and it's coming from the clean distillate that corn provides.
So the dark color is one of the comments that I've had so often, especially on the Grandma's Candy Bowl that we picked last year. You think about it, it's a 5-year-old bourbon that is darker than a lot of the 12-year-old. Granted, a lot of the 12-year-old are blended barrels, and it's a 12-year-old. What do you think the darker color is attributed to on the MB Roland distillate?
Well, number one, it's not watered down.
Yeah.
We add 0 water. So once it goes from the still, it goes to the barrel and it goes into the bottle. There's a lot of people that think that they want to taste something from the barrel. Well, when you get MB Roland, you're tasting it right from the barrel.
It's a relatively low barrel entry proof at 110, roughly 110. I mean, it might be 109, might be 111, but right in that world.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our aging climate, if you want to call it that, where our barrels are, I mean, it's not a huge warehouse with 20,000 barrels. So there's a lot of fluctuation from day to day, from week to week, more so than you get from a lot of your big distilleries, where there maybe some of the barrels on the periphery of that warehouse are going to go up and down a little bit more, but generally speaking, especially the ones in the middle, are going to have a certain amount of climate that they hold on to based on the temperatures that the warehouse essentially holds on to for the overall microclimate is what I call it.
Yeah, and I wanted you to go into that a little bit more, because we were talking about that before we actually started recording, which, as these things go, it tends to happen. We have a really good conversation and someone says, shit, I wish you were recording. And I said, yeah, it just wasn't the right time. And then they said, that's what she said. But the microclimate you were talking about, a lot of those bigger distilleries that have multiple floors, or whether or not it's one rickhouse with multiple levels on one floor or multiple floors within the rickhouse, they almost have microclimates, like where each floor is going to be a different temperature. The bottom floors might be 20 degrees less than the top floor, and you get into all of that. You guys, it's all in one floor, and it's basically going to be, it is what it is, right? Like the whole
place,
room
yeah,
is going to be one temperature rather than different temperatures in different areas, right?
Yeah, except occasionally you're going to get where the sun beats down on the west side. It really ends up warming up that one side of the barn. But again, that's just the one side of the barn. It's not like multiple levels. So you'll have some barrels come age a little bit faster than you will some others. But again, when you're talking about one aging warehouse with one level versus, numerous, that's going to make a difference.
That's interesting. You guys, I mean, for being around for 10 years and having, I know you were at least in Tennessee. Where else are you guys besides Tennessee and Kentucky?
Texas is one of our bigger markets. California, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Maryland, Delaware, Indiana, Illinois.
So
I said Maryland.
it's almost like I need to start asking you, where aren't you right now?
Well, there's still plenty of places where we're not.
Oh,
We
that's
are
a
in
lot.
Louisiana too. Forgot about
So close to Ohio.
that. Yeah,
So close. All around it.
I know. Just kind of surrounding.
That is a huge distribution compared to what people might think. That's a good number of states. I mean, that's got to be, what, 10 to 15 states right now?
It is. It's good distribution, but it's not. We don't produce enough to have a lot of depth in those states. So you're not going to be able to find us everywhere. It's going to be in the stores that carry a wide variety of spirits, not so much your mass production type spirits.
That makes sense.
I guess one of the big questions is people that want to know about your product, they want to know what's in the future. Like, what are you guys planning on? What are you guys looking at in the future? Do you have certain, let's say, do you have wheat whiskeys? Do you have corn fire whiskeys? Is there certain rye whiskeys? Is there something that you guys are kind of looking for in the future that you want to promote, that you want to talk about? Like, what's going on at the distillery right now?
Jeremy pays attention to what's in your gift shop, doesn't he?
He does.
Like he's been there before.
And then he buys it too.
We like kind of playing around with different things to kind of see what different directions we might want to go outside of bourbon. And one thing that we have done over the past few months is what we call our Kentucky Azul, which is a blue agave spirit that we actually distill here, and then we age it in our freshly dumped bourbon barrels. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people in the industry that we've let try this. And so we're making more. The good news is, of course, this is a reposado aged product, so it only takes a few months to age versus years like bourbon. And one reason we decided to do it was because there really wasn't anything quite like this done, particularly in Kentucky. But then at the same time, we've got these barrels that we're dumping, and as opposed to sending them out, what could we do with them to actually make a product? And this was one that we figured out was really a neat concept when it comes to something that's different. A lot of bourbon drinkers, of course, are also tequila drinkers. There's a lot of crossover there in the market. And, people that come here to the distillery, if maybe they're not a bourbon person, maybe they might be a tequila person. And we can, of course, legally we can't call it tequila.
And I will say this, like most college kids, at some point you have a bad experience with tequila. And
Never. I have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah, well, I was one of those stupid kids and could not touch it for years. And once we made this product, it's such a good sipping product. This is not something you want to do shots with. I mean, if you
What's the
choose to,
proof on
it's
this
fine.
one?
It's 105 proof.
Sorry, wasn't trying to cut you off.
It's
but
barrel proof. It's barrel proof, just like our bourbon, done the same way.
You can actually sit and sip on this stuff. You don't have to mix it with anything. It's amazing. It's really smooth. It's got a
Buttery
Really good
finish,
finish to
very
it.
buttery finish from the bourbon.
I swore tequila off my whole life and had to try it. We had it. It's like, damn.
Well, the funny thing is our mutual friend, Jared Thatcher and Kylie Thatcher, they said don't leave MB Roland without having this Kentucky Azul.
I didn't realize they had tried it.
Yeah, he tried it.
Okay.
And they just said, whatever you do not leave today without trying this. You're going to buy a bottle when you go to the gift shop. So we all have this. Salute.
Salute.
It's amazing.
Slange, whatever it is.
Slink, as they say.
Slante,
Sante.
which is flange.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
We're good. Oh, gosh.
I'm good.
That smells like I don't drink tequila. I don't drink tequila if unless it is in a margarita. That's the extent of my tequila drinking. I've had good tequila and I've had really bad
Isn't
tequila.
that good?
The only margaritas I really have are pizza.
There's that. You're going back to food. I'm staying on the liquid diet. You're going to the more substantial, solid diet. But
I mean, I am more of a food guy. Look at me. Like, I do not have the looks. I mentioned it on the Bourbon Beyond Takeover, but you guys are much more attractive than Zeke and I.
100%.
You are much more appealing physically. You all are skinny. You don't have porn stashes. You don't have a bald head.
Zeke has shaved his.
Zeke
He left it in the trunk of his car when he left today.
Zeke, no, he had this mustache, Mary Beth, that looked like he had a van. And that he was going to offer you candy.
That's a child molester.
So
Yes.
that's not porn.
no.
That's child molester.
I'm being very nice saying that.
the
but
last
he looked-
show that John, Zeke, Aaron, Jeremy, and I recorded together was when the mustache came into play.
Has it been a year?
It's been
Yes,
it's been
absolutely,
just over a year.
100%. And I asked him, "Where did you park the white van?"
He looked like
With a teardrop on the back of it.
Was it down
Zeke
by the river?
looked like Zeke looked like
Because he's a motivational speaker.
Zeke looked like he was going to come over to you and say like, "I need a van. It sounds like an ice cream truck that has a song for all of the children. La da 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 da."
That was it.
Where's the news? I just wonder where the mostly on paperboy is. Call me. But it was scary. I'm gonna have to show you a picture here.
So let's ask Paul to explain the whole background of that tequila, how it came to be.
Thank you for keeping us on track.
and what the future is going for that.
So the good part about this stuff is because it takes months versus years to age, we can make more of it as we see people, liking it as much as we do. Versus bourbon, of course, taking years. And this is one of those things that as time goes by, we might get a little bit more aggressive into it, but initially we're seeing where it goes, and it's a cool product. It's fun to distill something that's completely different from making a whiskey mash, and making the agave is almost more like doing a rum with molasses or sugar or something like that, as far as the way that it acts, and.
Kentucky just got their first order.
Yep.
So it just got
So
distributed.
technically, it just now is going out to Kentucky. So
So right now it's only here and in very select Kentucky stores.
And it's interesting because the label is even in Spanish.
that's right.
Hablo un poquito español, pero es muy mal. Lo siento.
Do you know that from New
Las
England? What does that
cucumberas
say?
entre pelo no puede salir.
It's MB Roland Sin Corte y No Filtrado, which MB Roland uncut and unfiltered.
Me being the graphic designer, I like how all of your labels coordinate. That is very awesome.
I do like the look of them because it's almost like an old Western
It is.
label, and
Yeah.
I know Zeke always gives me crap for focusing on marketing more, but I focus on marketing because I want to know that people have at least taken the time to, it's like if you just put it in a bottle and you put a label on it, I'm like, well, how much did you actually think about your presentation? It's like when you send an email to somebody and you have spelling errors. I'm like, did you really take the
that drives
time?
me nuts.
Yeah.
I'm such a Nazi a grammar Nazi, spelling Nazi. It's
Well,
horrible.
in the case of the Spanish that's on the label for the Azul or the agave, we have a gentleman that's a dear friend of ours that is certified in 52 or 53 different dialects of Spanish. He worked for U.S. Customs. And so we ran this through him. So if anything's wrong grammatically, it's his fault.
You all are producing a tequila, you're producing a moonshine, you're producing a wheated whiskey, a wheated bourbon, and a rye, amongst other things. So you have producers that are just producing a bourbon and moonshine just to stay in business. And some cases sourcing a bourbon just to stay in business. So where do you all think, and this is a loaded question, you can answer it or not, where do you think you stand amongst those people? I mean, you're distilling everything that you all produce yourselves. Tequila, bourbon, rye, wheat, everything.
Well, the biggest thing is we're independent. So, I mean, we think about what makes sense, and certain products that we make right now that we sell the most of here on site at the distillery, I mean, we literally came up with as a fun, project. And the intent was less so to make a product that was going to sell versus we want to make something that is fun and that we like and that we think other people will like. And so that's the mentality we've carried over to everything that we do. And if one day we do a rum, it's going to be with that mentality. It's not going to be because, let's make a rum because we don't have a rum on our shelf here, And some of these places, of course, are much larger than us. They're owned by conglomerates that they have a very distinct decision-making process. Luckily, we're not chained that way or handcuffed that way when it comes to the way that we do things.
How much do you guys produce in a week? So when you think about distilling and your still size right now and the multiple things you do you do multiple bottles of different releases a week, or do you kind of sit there and say, okay, we could put out 3 to 5 a week and 3 of them are going to be bourbon, 2 are going to be rye, or this week is all bourbon, next week's all rye?
Or how much of it do you come across and you think, holy cow, this is batch 1 rye, we're putting this out, this is phenomenal, everybody will want it?
Well, it's 2 different mindsets. You've got what you put away, and then you have what you're actually pulling that's aged product. So we run 6 times a week, and each day we're running approximately 6 and some change, 1 and some change barrels. So we're running about 7 to 8 barrels a week. Not a lot, obviously, not a huge amount. The bulk of that is bourbon and whiskey. And some of the other products that we do is obviously a lesser amount of that. But in the case of, what we're putting away versus what we're pulling out, you're going to taste your product that's coming along, that's aging, or that gets to a point where you actually think that it's in a place where it's a good, mature product that you actually want to bottle and use it. And luckily for us, we're not cutting product down. We're taking barrels and blending them and bottling it at barrel proof. So what we pull is essentially based on when it's ready. There's no magic number. We look at roughly, for our 25-gallon barrels, 2 years is kind of the bell ringer for, we need to try this, we need to see where it's at. Certain barrels will say, hey, that needs some time. That needs 6 months, another year, whatever it needs. Other products, at 1 year and 365 days, you're tasting it and you're going, okay, that's really, really good. So it's ready when it's ready. We don't have an actual clock that we set on anything. And then on the 53-gallon barrels, it's minimum 4 years, which is obviously the industry standard.
So to follow up on that question, talk to us a little bit about your experimental barrels. Because I know you guys do some corn fire, you do wheated, you do malted, you do all kinds of different one-off type of things. Talk to us a little bit how often you would do that, and then what you're trying to get,
What the intent is.
What the intent is going with the one-off barrels you guys have.
So about once every 3 or 4 months, we'll make a unique recipe. We call it a single mash. That's just a one-off. And the idea is we're going to age it. We're going to see what happens. And like this one right here, which we pulled a sample of, y'all can try, is the hemped bourbon. It's 20% Kentucky hemp, actual hemp seed. And so it has a very, very, very unique flavor from that hemp. There's not a lot of starch content in hemp. It's mainly oil and protein. There's not a whole lot of starch for the sake of getting alcohol.
It's definitely not cost efficient to make.
No, it's,
so we
it's
will
certainly
not,
not.
be.
Making
It's not
a
gonna be
huge
normal
volume.
Product.
No.
Yeah.
But it's very unique and very different. And we've done that, like we've got a sample here of a high wheat bourbon that's roughly double the amount of wheat that's in our standard wheated bourbon. And, you know, that's something where we'll try it. We'll see how it ages, because everything ages a little different based on the distillate that's going in the barrel. Barrels, you'd like to think are the same, and they technically are, but each individual barrel is going to have wood from different trees that are different ages. So it's not an exact apples to apples comparison when you age one thing with one recipe and compare it to something else. It's close, but it's not exactly there. So the barrels staying the same, our process stays the same as far as the way we make the product. The recipe is the big thing that changes, and to a lesser extent the yeast, because we try to stay true to our yeast, but of course, like with the agave, we had to use a different kind of yeast that's more prone to fermenting agave versus whiskey.
And of course, the intent whenever you're doing something new is it something that we want to continue making? Is it something that, you know, with being a smaller distillery, you can afford to do test batches? It doesn't cost an extreme amount, and obviously you're not depending on it for your normal sales supply.
Like,
So
I don't
you
want to
can
make a
afford
bunch
to-
of brandy.
Yeah.
Brandy,
We do have a
we make a tiny bit of
local
brandy, and we're
yeah.
happy making that small amount.
Yeah.
And we don't want to make a full-time product of brandy.
But there's a lot of folks that love a wheated bourbon. There's a lot of folks that love a rye whiskey.
I feel like wheated takes a little bit longer though, which
Yeah.
is
the
always
aging process?
Yeah, it's you could have a 4-year bourbon. I mean, rye is always the easiest. You could put out a 2-3 year rye and it could be really good. Bourbon might take a little bit longer, and then I almost feel like wheated is a little bit longer than that just to get right.
Because the flavors are more subtle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're more muted. Definitely
Yeah.
rye's got that spicier note, that more cinnamon, peppery
It jumps
note.
out like, a lot more aggressively.
Yeah. Like today, for instance, we actually are doing our very first completely 100% raw grain mash bill. So we'll see what that turns out like. But again, it's going to take a couple of years to find out.
Now, when you do a test batch, are you doing a full still run, or are you doing a smaller test still?
No, it'll be the full still run,
It'll be roughly the equivalent of 225s or 153-gallon barrel.
which is our stills.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ability. That's our current capability right now.
So speaking of stills, we touched on this a little bit earlier, just in the conversation, I think, before we actually hit record. We were talking about column stills versus pot still. You guys are currently pot still. Do you kind of a two-part question? Do you think you would ever go to column still, and why have you chosen to start with pot still?
No, I don't think we're ever going to go to column still. It would completely change our flavor profile. It would completely change the way we would have to create the bourbon. With a pot still, we are able to control the proof content that goes into the barrel, comes off the still. On a column still, it's going to be much higher. You're going to have to add that water, and in which case it is going to completely change what's in the bottle.
And part of it, too, is the way it distills. I mean, the flavor you get from a pot distillation versus a column are marketably different. And I'm not saying one's better or one's worse, but we have grown ourselves with a pot distilled product, and we feel that, I mean, it would be wrong at this point to change the product that much by going to a column distillation process. So, you know, even if we have to put in, say, a 4,500 gallon, stripping still operation with a pot still, that's what we're going to do.
A good example is we chose not to source bourbon when we first opened. That was a conscious decision. We looked at the pros and cons. Hindsight being 2020, we would have been profitable a lot earlier had we have done that. But we can say with pride from day one, everything that we've made has been from us. Had we have sourced, then once you start making your own distillate, you've got to get everybody's palate accustomed to what you're now putting out versus what you're buying and putting in a bottle and slapping your label on it. So once again, it's a completely different flavor profile. So it's the same concept.
That makes sense. One thing I gotta tell you is I posted a picture of the dog.
I saw it.
And
It's cute.
We got 2 here.
the dog. Well, yeah, you do have two. You do have 2 dogs, but everybody is going crazy on Instagram right now
Are they with
over
Cass?
your dog. Yeah.
He's our baby.
We got Wolfgang and Cass, and they are fixtures here at the distillery. We have people now that walk up, and they might be second or third visit coming to see us, and they'll, where's Wolfgang? Where's Cass? You know, I mean, they'll be hanging out in the gift shop. They're our version of Jimmy Russell. You know.
Yeah.
They're always here.
Except kids love to snuggle with ours. You know.
Hey.
Jimmy's a pretty snuggy guy.
Jimmy.
But in the case of the dogs, I mean we got a farm atmosphere. We got cats, we got dogs. We've talked about bringing in other animals, and at some point we may. But,
Somebody's going to have to take care of them,
someone
though.
will take care of them. But
Well,
It's
is
like
there
having
anything-
a baby. Somebody's got to change its diaper.
I mean, you guys could do cows and maybe just goats and things that just eat grass that you can kind of put out there.
still
And just,
and corn stalks.
you don't have to do
Definitely.
much. What do you got?
You would have vet bills, and you'd have to have somebody take care of them if you're not going to be the one taking care of them.
Yeah.
Like right now, we've got a cat who's got an ear issue that we've got, and she's half feral, but she's lived here since 2010.
Yeah, and
2009.
We've had all of our animals spayed and neutered. They all get their
they're all
shots
taken
and
care of,
stuff like
fed well, and so we've got to figure out how to catch this cat and bring it to the vet because she's got this swollen ear, and we want to take care of the animals,
that. And usually we end up with strays. That's how Wolfgang came. He wandered up and said he was
Silo.
going to stay. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
didn't have a collar though, right? Like you didn't cut off
Oh,
a collar.
No, no.
He's ours.
He's ours now.
No. Trust me.
We
I
would have
would've-
loved to have found the owner.
Well, we love him. He's an awesome dog, and we've had him for 10 years now.
Yep.
Probably. Yeah. So he's probably 11 or 12. But I think because so many people know we're big animal lovers and we're in the country, unfortunately, animals do get dropped in this area.
If that was the case, there's an alpaca farm up the street. I've been dying to get an alpaca.
Those things will spit at you.
It's a
They
certain
will.
thing.
It's like a camel.
Give 'em
Yeah.
a little fast.
Or a goat, if you get a goat ticked off enough. So we've talked a lot about what you guys are currently offering. Where do you see MB Roland going in the future?
I was gonna ask that. That's a great
I
question.
beat you to
You
it.
did.
It's like I've done a podcast before.
It's nice though. I like this podcast. I know we've kind of been a little bit everywhere, but we have been picking a barrel all morning and smoking cigars. But it's nice when Zeke's not here and there's people that are pros. Because I get to kind of just sit back and say like, no, you ask some questions. I'm just smoking this cigar right now.
I mean, seriously, when you think about it, though, I mean, you guys have fantastic whiskey that you've produced. You've got tequila, you have rye, you have bourbon, you have what else? You have weeded malts.
I have
You've
to
got-
say this Kentucky Azul is really, really,
If
really
if
good.
I were a tequila drinker, this would 100% be the tequila that I would put in my glass. If I were making a just any cocktail that calls for a tequila. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it's what I would put in it. I'm from Kentucky. That's what I would put in it. It's barrel aged. It's from Kentucky. I feel like I'm cheating on my home state if I don't use something from Kentucky.
That's right.
But all of that said, where do you guys see MB Roland going moving forward? I mean, again, fantastic products.
Thank you.
Fantastic products. We come here every year for a reason.
Thank you. Hopefully, only going up. That's the goal. You don't go in business to slide backwards, right? So we are branching out to more states every year, and one of our biggest things is getting our name out. That is the biggest thing with any small business. Marketing, brand awareness.
We don't have a big portfolio, from a standpoint of conglomerate that has products in every single category.
I mean, we've got plenty of product. That's
Yeah, but I'm talking about like, household name conglomerates.
Right.
Products.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Right.
So, but
We've made more every year, and we plan on making more, as time goes by.
right.
I have to tell you, I can't wait to see where you guys go. I know we've been wanting to come up and actually talk to you guys for a while, so thank you for spending the time with us today. I do have to ask, Seth and Aaron, I know you guys are whispering, you're kibitzing over there, but have you made a damn decision yet?
That's what we're just whispering about.
I know. I heard you.
That's what we're whispering about.
I'm putting you on the. But we've had. I do want to mention, right? Let's talk about their barrel pick program for a second, because I've done a couple of picks up here. I did a pick with the Bourbon Cartel. I've done a pick with you all. Paul's really good about. He brings out 5 bourbon, 5 rye. And you can kind of pick what you like out of all this. We'll sit around. Mary Beth, I want to say thank you for going to get pizza today.
Well, I tell you, I worked so hard doing that.
I know.
You're so welcome.
I know.
They had a phone number.
And they did not have a phone that you could call them, so you actually had to physically go there.
That makes it better, right?
But what I don't like about that is I understand her point. She has to go there. She can't order until she gets there. Well, anything is 15 minutes away up here.
Yes.
So
100% yes.
she could have ordered the pizza, driven there, and the pizza would have been
Yes.
ready by the time she got there.
That's our point.
Instead, she had to go there, sit, order, wait.
If you are in the area of MB Roland Distillery, just have your stuff ready to go within 10 minutes.
But see, I grew up in Adams, Tennessee. I mean, that's in
That's Robertson County for
Robertson
them,
County,
you know.
Tennessee. Yeah. So
It's
nice area. But in the 70s, when I was growing up, it was much smaller than it is now, and so it took 30 minutes to get anywhere. It wasn't like 15 minutes down the road, so it's no big deal to me.
30 minutes to get to the metropolis of Springfield.
Yeah.
Well, I always like that episode of The Office where it's pizza by Alfredo or Alfredo's Pizzeria. And Michael orders, but they all say to go to Alfredo's, and
Wrong answer,
he orders
Michael.
by pizza.
Wrong answer.
He orders pizza by Alfredo, but he was supposed to order Alfredo's Pizzeria, and then everybody gets pissed at him. I know I could look around and look at the name of this pizzeria, but I'm not going to say anything. Just if you're around MB Roland and you own a pizza place and you listen to this podcast, get a damn phone. Like with this day and age, you all could have a cell phone
Or a
Y'all
legit
could have-
website to where you could accept orders online.
Yes,
There's a
Yeah,
thing
true.
called Uber Eats.
There's an app.
Spectacular thing.
There's an app. Get a pizza app. Do y'all have a bourbon app yet?
No, we don't have an app yet. Those things are expensive.
Are they?
Yeah, super expensive.
We're gonna have to hook you up with some people and.
It's not the design, it's the maintenance
No,
to keep them updated.
That's not. That's what I do every day is digital marketing. We could probably, between John and myself, we could probably help you with that.
Yeah, Seth is gonna get the MBR app.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
It'll be live
And then-
before we even leave the premises.
You go.
And the best one, Mary Beth, is that not only could you say that a distillery is named after you, you could say an app is named after
An app.
you
you
too.
go.
Yeah.
And
There you
there
go.
could be like distillery games like Catch the Dog, all sorts of stuff like that.
How does that, but seriously though, how does it make you feel that I have Mary Beth on my phone, Paul?
He's okay.
He's
okay.
She can
thinking
handle
about it.
herself, I think.
He's all right.
So have you all decided
Aaron,
on a
I'm
damn
going to turn it
bomb?
over to you. What are we picking?
So as you went through the rye, there were 2 that you really liked. As you went through the bourbon, there were 2.5, I think, in the bourbon that you really liked. There was one that we really liked, but it would need a little bit more time in the barrel. And then there were 2 that we were really debating over. There was one rye that pairs very, very, very well with a cigar. There's a bourbon that tastes like cornbread and Twizzlers to me. what did you all go with? Because there's a lot of good stuff here.
So I will interject there. We tried stuff straight up. We blended a few bottles.
Oh, you guys did your homework. Don't get me wrong.
We did. We had stuff with cigars. We had stuff with food. We had stuff straight up.
You fed it to the dogs, see which one they liked better.
We haven't gone that far yet. That's next, but that's not going to decide what we end up picking. But we did a lot of stuff. So
We did. So between all 10, we ended up going with bourbon number E.
Yep.
Bourbon E.
Solid
E.
pick. It's very good. It's the nose. It's nice, creamy. A lot of corn. A little bit of licorice, anise. The palate was just phenomenal. Nice spice, pepper, a lot of sweet corn. Like he was saying, a little bit of cornbread, a lot of vanilla. The finish was long, nice, spicy. Got a lot of red hots, rye. It's great bourbon.
And I will say, if you liked Grandma's Candy Bowl, you will like this.
Good.
Grandma's Candy Bowl, and I will say that Mike and you and the others at MB Roland had a term for it. It was cake batter. When I came to pick up the barrel, it was cake batter. This is the cake batter barrel. We called it the butterscotch barrel. It was Grandma's Candy Bowl. That's what we rolled out with. I think this is on par with that. And
I'm going to call this one cornbread and Twizzlers.
There you go.
With red hots.
With red hots.
Cornbread, red hot.
With a pop of red hots.
I think the sticker needs to be a dog holding Twizzlers, cornbread, and red hots.
And Grandma's Candy Bowl.
All right.
I think it's a solid pick, and I don't think anybody tasting it will be disappointed.
I think that E-Bourbon is a very, very good pick. It's nice. It's a lot of baking spice in there as well as the red hot and the licorice. I think it's a good all-around pick, and everybody's going to be very happy with it. As far as everything going on at MB Roland, Mary Beth, Paul, thank you guys so much. We can't wait to come back and do another podcast with you all.
Thank you very much for coming.
Oh no, I think this was fun. I think this shows y'all's personality very well in the sense that it's a very down home. Y'all are good people, and we're just lucky to spend some time with you. So.
Yeah, they're extremely great people. I mean, if you come here for a pick, you're going to get what you've heard today or tonight, depending on when you're listening to it.
Probably not today or tonight. I got to edit it.
I'm just saying, as in listening.
Yes.
That's what you're going to get. You hear what you get. Fantastic people. I mean, they roll out the red carpet for you. We sampled, 15 bourbon and ryes today. We tried a couple of other things. And the bourbon that we've ultimately gone with, the tasting notes were cherries. It was very sweet, light oak, some caramel. The palate was really well balanced. Just a great body, creamy, long finish. Just a good, sweet, balanced bourbon. And that's what these guys do at MB Roland. And you're never going to be disappointed when you come here.
I will have to say one last note that Aaron and I have been doing this for 3 years in a row now. And these guys are just phenomenal how they take care of people that come down to see them. It is one of the best bourbon experiences that I've ever had in my life. Like, you come down here, these guys roll out the red carpet. They literally give you some of the best samples that they have in their rick house, and you get to taste those. And then you get to pick some of the best samples that they have. Like, a lot of those samples that they're bringing out are earmarked for things that they want to do single barrels or they want to put in their gift shop. And they will literally give those to you so you can buy those for yourselves. And we've done this 3 years in a row, and I can't see that there's not going to be a fourth year in a row.
No, absolutely.
No, because that's the only time I get to see you guys. So
Keep it going.
I hope we have the Dad's Drinking Bourbon Firewater Review Conclave once a year. It's something I look forward to every year. But people can find Firewater Review at Firewater Review. I hope we get to see some podcasts coming soon. But Seth,
too.
Aaron, Jeremy, thank you very, very much for coming.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate the Mary Beth and Paul for having us here, and Mike, and I mean just the hospitality that we've had here. It's been a great experience, as it is every year. And John and Zeke, no thanks to you.
No, nobody thanks Zeke. Nobody ever thanks Zeke. Zeke is a jerk.
We appreciate it. I mean, every year and year out, that's why we come here. It really
There's
is.
two of you?
Yeah, there is. One of us didn't make it. I am the one who knows how to record, which is the most important part. So I'm the one that you want to have show up.
The one that can edit out.
The one that can record and edit and all that stuff. Zeke just kind of shows up and drinks. But
So you're the dad that actually got the babysitter.
yes, well, my daughter's at school right now, and I'm going to be home in time to cook dinner for my family because I'm a good dad and I put the family first. So I took the day off of work. That's why we're wrapping up now, because I have to drive back to Tennessee and make dinner. But Paul, Mary Beth, Mike, Taylor, Liz, all the good folks over here at MB Roland, thank you very much for having us. They can follow you at MB Roland on Instagram, MB Roland on Facebook, mbroland.com, and make sure you check out everything they have. I do have to say, you know, their bourbon, their rye, their wheat whiskey, they're all good. That Kentucky Azul is even better. And this is a bourbon show, but that is a special bottle right there, and I hope people show up to the gift shop and have that. Check out MB Roland. They're doing great things. I know there are going to be great things to come in the future, and we can't wait to come do a follow-up with you when those things are coming into fruition.
Yep,
So
we will share it all.
cheers.
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 Later.